We'll actually be able to see. Oh, there we live. Yay! Okay, how's it, everybody? Welcome back, and we're ready to go. Ooh, look, there's actually 3 people on there. That's brilliant. It's always the eternal hope that if somebody's actually watching. So, anyway, super exciting show today. We've got the guys from iGen here. So, Jacques, Sydney, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
We're going to kind of like do just a quick intro for everybody. This is, as always, 30 minutes, powerful, to the point. Let's get it over the line. This is not a 45-minute hour deliberation process. So we're going to go for the kill, give the people what they want, the straight facts. And I think it's one of the things, so I'll start, obviously. I think, as everybody already knows, kind of like I'm Sean, blah, 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 we know the rest. But I think most importantly, today is about some of the geniuses that we use within the NuHome offering, and iGen. They are one of our battery storage solutions, and I'm not going to hop on a hop about what their products can do and can't do. I'm going to allow them to give you guys a quick rundown of what it is. So I'll let Jacques start. Jacques, introduce yourself, give a rundown of who you are, and then give Sydney a go, and then we can start delving into the nuts and bolts.
Excellent. Jacques Bess here. I'm the technical lead at iGen. So we manufacture lithium storage solutions, and we apply that in various factors. And that is essentially what the company is about. And I've got Sydney here next to me.
Sydney, Chief Revenue at iGen. So effectively, from our side, we enjoy making storage products. We keep your lights on, and we're the guys that you're going to store that energy after you've produced it and got it from the sun.
Super. So yeah, I think it's always one of these very interesting questions when you go through the process. We talk NuHome and powering people's lives and everything else that goes with it. So one of the kind of like very interesting aspects people always ask us, oh, okay, but I can get and not necessarily in this case specific on because people are not necessarily paying for it, but let's just talk about costs very quickly for people that don't necessarily want to go the NuHome route and maybe want to pay for it directly out of their pocket. Traditionally people went like, oh yeah, but I can get lead acid for cheaper. And like, Jacques, give us a bit of a rundown and a comparison between lithium and lead acid and the do's and don'ts between the two quickly.
Definitely. So lead acid has always been there as storage. Everyone knows lead acid as a storage battery as such. You have it in your car to start your car.
Yeah.
So that technology is very old, but it has its limitations. It's got its its positives also, but comparative to lithium, you're basically looking at almost a factor 5 improvement on what storage can be. So in the industry, we call it an energy density, essentially, which means that is essentially how much the chemistry can actually give you, and that is watt hours. So if you compare that just quickly, there's a lot of factors to it also. Lead acid is run about 30 to 40 watt hours per kg. If you're looking at lithium, we're starting to look at almost 190 to 160 watt hours per kg. So what that means is that you can basically have a battery that is similar form factors of what lead acid is, but almost twice, if not 3 times, the actual capacity of energy inside it.
Okay.
And that's where lithium comes in. Lithium is, I would almost call it a raging bull.
Yeah.
If you look at your chemistry classes at school, it's a very volatile element.
Yeah.
So what the guys are doing is they are mixing that lithium with other chemistries, and I almost feel like it's almost like a witch with a cauldron that are just making a special brew. and you can essentially make that to suit. You can high density lithium products, or you can get high energy products. So with that, you basically get a standard where you can say that comparative to lead acid, you can do 300 with cycles on lead acid on a good day. But if you're looking at lithium, you're looking at 4,000 to 5,000 cycles, and it just keeps on improving. And over the years, the variance within lithium has also improved.
Okay.
So in the early days, everyone knows laptop batteries warming up, early cell phone batteries, the Samsung debacle.
Yeah.
Those lithium chemistries are sometimes in an umbrella description.
Yeah.
And that's quite dangerous because underneath that, there are actually variants to that. It's not just lithium.
Okay.
So what we settled on our side also, specifically for our environment here in Africa, is lithium-ion phosphate, or what they call LFP, or lithium ferrophosphate. So that chemistry is one of the oldest, but it's also one of the most stable chemistries, especially when it comes to temperature. So you sacrifice slightly on energy density compared to the others, but you don't have thermal runaway and all of those factors that you need to basically take care of. So all of the technologies that people started with, your NMCs and all of, you also see that the acronyms are basically the chemistries inside.
Yeah.
So you'll have nickel, cobalt,
Correct. Yeah.
and the rest. And the cobalt has been also quite a contentious issue lately. So you'll see that everyone is going away from cobalt.
Correct.
And also standardizing on something that's a lot more mature and a little bit more stable. So we also use the lithium iron phosphate as a subset within our offering, and we basically bring in cells that are different capacities.
Yeah.
So what's nice with lithium also, because you don't have one centralized battery, you've got separate cells, you can build that pack into whatever form factor you want. And that's why it's got EV applications, it's got stationary storage applications, various applications you can do, and you can build your pack for different applications in the sense of voltage ranges. And it's just a wide range. So that's why lithium as a subset is essentially being the standard now. It's going to be here for the next few decades to come.
Okay.
There's other chemistries on the market also. You've got flow technologies, you've got salt batteries. All of those are promising, but on scale, because in the lab you can have a wonderful result.
Yeah.
But bringing it out commercially is a different thing altogether.
Like, I want to interrupt. I remember there was a salt battery that I'm trying to remember, Arion, and something like that.
Yeah.
It came out of the States.
Yeah.
It was bound, and unfortunately, they just overnight folded
Correct.
because of the volume of space required.
Yeah.
I mean, like, a 1 kilowatt battery was basically like a cubic meter of space.
Correct.
I mean, can you imagine if you want to have a 20 kilowatt hour battery in your house? Yeah, you're not going to work so well, right?
And that brings us back to lead acid also, because if you look in the old days, if you, let's say you do a 20 kilowatt hour system, it's a sizable space on the floor that you need. You've got gasification, safety requirements that you need from there, and you obviously need a bit of maintenance sometimes on it.
Yeah.
With lithium, you basically don't have those aspects, but you're sitting with a 40 to 60% reduction in volumetric size, and weight and all of those factors come basically as positives.
Yeah.
Because apart from the cycle count, your transport fees are lower, your scalability and just usage is a lot more better. So your return on investment at the end of the day just makes a lot more sense. Upfront capital is more, so that's where people are a little bit offish on it.
Yeah.
But if you do the math and you see how long lithium will last, you compare to how many times you have to swap out lead as a system,
100%.
you essentially basically work out on paper that it works out.
Go for it.
When you start to see the differences, I mean, we can see the EV uptake is changing a lot of things. So because of the EV uptake, there's more safety that's being built into lithium. So based on that, even from a transportation perspective, we're going to start seeing costs come down in terms of the rating from a dangerous goods perspective. People are going to start being more conscious. That makes the product more accessible.
Yeah.
And thanks to EV, now it's going to be even much easier for you to access the product at a lower rate in terms of the freighting fees.
Yeah.
So those are the type of things that we're looking at from a lithium perspective. And I see a future in this, right? It being adopted in the EV market, it means the economies of scale are improving. Ultimately, the product will become, or should I say the cells will become so cheap that it's ultimately going to replace the market because you're getting more bang for your buck in terms of the energy density.
Yeah. I think the nice thing, and I think this is one of the things that, I mean, I'm going to use the example. I like real life examples.
Yes.
So Andrew's mum, how's it, Mrs. Stockel, if you're out there, but you know, about 2 years ago, she phoned Andrew and she been like, "So Andrew, I bought myself a solar system," and like he said, "Mum, what did you do? Like, why did you talk to me?" You know, like, and he was like, exactly. So long story short, you know, she bought lead acid batteries. And you're like, what did you do? You're going to replace it. Trees nuts. Like clockwork, 2 years later, she's got to fork out 50% of the capital that she previously spent again. And I think that is the kind of things that not everybody kind of like puts it out there. You have these, you know, like flashy salesmen walk in there and like slick and like they sell you a product with lead acid batteries and they go, yeah, it's going to take your house off the grid. But what they don't tell you is the depth of cycling, the discharge is going through that process, how many times you're cycling the batteries, and effectively not the part where, by the way, you're going to destroy the batteries within 2 years, you're going to have to replace it again. And I think that's the difference, and that's where the beauty of lithium comes in.
Definitely, and you actually, with lead acid, you destroy the battery at the end of that 2 years. With lithium, even after those 4,000 cycles, you have a reduced capacity. It's not a non-working battery.
Correct.
So we were talking about streams also. With lithium, you also have a second life stream. And there's different things you can do with that. And on price, you're almost going to get to a point where you can take on lead acid as a replacement. But we see that there's still some technology needed for that. And that's also where we're pioneering to get the controlled electronics for that area sorted out, so you can have something that's still stable, even though it's second life.
Okay.
I mean, you're looking at design lives of about 15 years of lithium, right?
Yeah.
So it is an investment, but I mean, let's just look at what 15 years means in context, right? Most people pay off their bond within 20 years. It's just 5 years shy of that for something. So when you start looking at in terms of the cost of the product, you need to evaluate it on the cost of what would it mean over 15 years as an investment. In terms of when you look at the short cycle, it's like 2 years. Yes, I spent very little on that asset, but I've got a 2-year runtime, and I'm going to probably replace that how many times over the period. Let's also look at the escalating cost of the actual replacement,
100%.
the installation. So those are things that people don't consider that, and I see this as an investment that is transferable.
Yeah.
If the product can last for 15 years, I'm likely to transfer it with the actual home.
Yeah.
So
and I think that's a big kind of like the big benefit of NuHome is that the clients in our case, like we choose to work with companies like yourself that provide really good products that can stand the test of time. That is going to be there for like the 15-year period, the 10-year period. And I think that's the important thing. And I think it's, touching on comfort for clients, people always kind of like a lot of questions, but what's going to happen? New technology, what's going to change? And it's like, yes, technology is going to change, but know that the technology that we're putting in now is the best that we can put in now, and there will be ever ongoing development. And I think that is one of the big benefits is that we know that come the end of the life of the batteries, it's not the client's problem to replace the batteries, it's mine. And this is the nice thing with the relationship with iGen is that we're going to come to you guys and say, okay, right, we need to change this. So the client doesn't worry about it. There's no extra cost for the client. That's just all on NuHome because it's all our responsibility.
Yep.
But we're working closely with the guys and we've got our fingers on the button when it comes to the products.
I mean, when you talk about maintenance, it's such an important part of this. The mere fact that NuHome take care of the maintenance aspect means that you have confidence in the products that you put down. You are ultimately going to be responsible for that 10 or 15-year PPA. So the quality of equipment becomes quite important. Now, when a client then considers this, you have to have direct context. I'll take a NuHome PPA, or I'll spend very little on a lead acid system that will last me for 2 years, but then what happens to the ongoing maintenance and replacement costs? So take your time when making an investment decision. If you don't have upfront capital, consider PPAs like this and consider the why aspect. So even if you're at a position where you want to buy, it already tells you from a benchmark perspective, what are they buying? What securitizes them to be able to put together a 15-year PPA?
I think it's quite interesting. I mean, like you make a very kind of interesting point around this because I sometimes look at it and go, you can buy it yourself, but you do know that you're probably going to want to sell it again. And how much money? And people hate me using that kind of example, but I like to use cars as an example. Like you buy a car, you hoove an astronomical amount of money into a 5-year period for a car, and then what do you do with the car? You sell it again. And repeat the process over and over, and literally that's like a liability every time. I probably know 2 or 3 people that actually is really good with buying and selling and looking after cars, and they actually make money every time. I don't know. My brother is one of those individuals. I don't know how he does it. It's
special sauce.
But he's a special kind of like type of human. But I think from that perspective, I think it's if I'm going to go this investment route, like I want to kind of like make a return out of it. And when you buy something that you don't necessarily know how to maintain, etc. You kind of go, should you really be spending money on something like that? Is it really a good investment? And I think at the price point that NuHome's coming in, it's like a no-brainer to kind of like hang on to the technology that we're putting in. So, but enough about the NuHome kind of like pricing and so. So let's go talk about what is the future, because that's one of the other big questions that comes in. Like, what is the future? Oh, Sean, but batteries are going to change next year and the year after that. Jacques had a very kind of interesting comment earlier, and he says like, the Chinese community is really adopting lithium as a kind of buy-in for the next certain period, and you mentioned a couple of decades. But I mean, like, there's at least that kind of time in it before we're going to see a fundamental shift to a different technology. And if we look at adoption times, I mean, like, from the kind of like the generation of a new kind of tech in your head to it actually becoming commercially viable, that is an enormous amount of time.
You're looking at least a decade, right? It makes sense on paper, it looks good on paper, but commercializing it is always different. the incentives behind it. Those programs take billions to do.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you can just start up. We know for a fact that there will be new technology, but it won't be necessarily commercially viable at a given point in time. And remember, adaptation as well, you need to look at where we are in terms of the global scale. We are in Africa. So if it's 10 years for the rest of the world, it's probably 20 for us.
that is the reality, sadly. And I mean, and let's look at this. I mean, we use a stupid example. So let's take Tesla for an example. Okay, what has their adoption growth rate been like? And they didn't have little money through; they had big money backing them.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I mean, like they've been growing 5, 6, 7 years already, and they are Tesla. You know. So any other Tom, Dick, and Harry coming up with a similar kind of like technology to scale it, you're going to see similar kind of like growth points. You know, you're going to see that similar kind of exponential growth out of them. It's going to be exponential, but not in a year, 2 years, 3, 4 years, 5. You know, we're talking 6, 7, 8, 9 years before it becomes commercially viable. And as you rightly said,
Exactly.
by the time that cool tech hits Africa, shoot,
No, definitely.
I'll be dead.
You have to project into the future. We haven't even really got into electric vehicles, right? On the e-mobility side. So now you're looking at it and saying, even our assembly industry, we're still producing diesel and petrol cars. And we are probably worried that we need to make that transformation over the next 10 years. So from an adaptation perspective, we're not yet there. So lithium is going to be with us from an Africa perspective for at least the next 2 decades. So that's why people should actually just calm down, because even if there is solid state batteries and so forth coming into the market, for it to be commercially viable in Africa, it will take a little bit longer. And we need to be aware of that. I mean, Europe, they've taken on to electric vehicles like that, but they already have the infrastructure. You comparing it with countries that don't have baseline infrastructure.
It does pose problems also. If you have a mass adoption like you have in Europe, you don't necessarily have the same scale in adaptation of the infrastructure. And I mean, we've got that as a magnifying glass here. So yes, let's do EVs in Africa, but do we have the infrastructure that can actually support that? So all of this technology and storage as a whole is there actually to support that. So it's almost indirectly supporting itself, because EVs are driving the R&D engine for it. And if you look at e-mobility, there isn't another technology or chemistry as such, or subset, that will work within something that moves, that's got safety requirements, vibrations, heat, all of that. So the lithium subset as a driver is definitely going to be there. But I mean, you were talking about what's lying ahead. Just the other day, CATL, the biggest manufacturer of storage and of other variants of batteries, but also of lithium, announced also that they've been working on solid state for the last 10 years. All right. So solid state is basically, everyone has been looking for what is the next big iteration. Not small, because we've seen how the price has been coming down nicely over the last decade or so. This year, apparently, we'll see a bit of a rise because of the onset of COVID and the result of that. But then after 14 months, we'll go back to hopefully that same graph. Solid state is basically a factor 2 or factor 3 in energy density, but a reduction in production cost, a reduction in weight. So it is getting better, but still the same products can reutilize it. It's also a prismatic cell. It will still be something that you can just repackage within your own subset. So you don't have to go and replumb the whole house just because the battery changed. Right? So there is literally decades and decades still within this technology. Just as a bit of a glimpse, 4 years ago, if you look about 4 or 5 years ago when Tesla started, they made their own battery, NMC, and other chemistries that we were working with, never looked at LFP. The Chinese environment essentially have the copyright of that at the moment. And they had thermal issues, they had a lot of overheating, etc., and cooling that they have to do. And as soon as they went into China, they had to also adopt LFP. And suddenly the whole world is looking at LFP again. In those years, everyone was saying, no, LFP is on its way out. We're looking at what is going to replace it. Doesn't matter if other things heat up a little bit, we'll make a plan. Suddenly LFP is the golden child, and we've seen almost a 5% increase on density within 1 year. Just people bringing up new chemistries and working on it. So it's very encouraging that the EV space is actually driving that. But as a subset, there isn't another potential for an element to to be commercially viable,
Yeah.
like what we've seen.
No, 100%. I think that adoption, I mean, like, it's quite interesting because we always talk about, what helps technology go forward. And I think it's broader adoption. And I think, this is the part that makes it really exciting for me when I look at all this stuff, because lithium is being adopted on a mass scale. We used to see it in this little bad boys around, and it was iffy and funny. And I mean, like, oddly enough, I took this thing in to have its battery replaced. It literally took me an hour and a half, sat there, took it out, put it back in, and I left the shop.
Exactly.
So now the start question is like, do I really need to upgrade every year?
Exactly.
Because why do we upgrade? We upgrade, software's in there, maybe hardware every 2-3 years if you want to, but battery, get in there and get out. So that's quite interesting. But I think the bigger thing is, like you say, with EVs, with a mass adoption of lithium, it's going to be around.
Yeah.
We're seeing all of these kind of like pushing of the existing chemistry, which is going to change things, which is going to make it more interesting. But I think ultimately for us on the continent here, it's sometimes a very different reality.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, we literally have to adapt with what's been given to us, and I always have a chuckle. I mean, like, so I always joke about the Toyota Hiluxes, like literally, you watch the movies, what's the first thing all the bad guys do? They take one of those big machine guns, slap it on the back, and voila, you have a massive tank. Watch out, like, bad Americans coming into like
a raider.
Yeah, and it's just like but that is the kind of like adoption that we'll see on the continent. I think the adoption of thinking and change and pushing the boundaries, I don't think we've even scraped the surface of the brains that we have on this continent. Because we always kind of think like, oh no, in America, in Europe, I think there's a lot of thinking that is really going to change how we use lithium, because it's literally like most of the stuff is coming, it's here.
It's right.
It is.
Right.
It is.
So who better to kind of like take it to the next level than where it comes from effectively? So that's kind of like a whole different kettle of fish. But I want to kind of, because I'm a bit of a skateboarder, so I want to like kind of know from you guys, when are you going to give me a battery so I can put it on my skateboard, please? So, because I'm tired of like, driving in my car to work, I want a skateboard to work. That'll be pretty rad. So can you guys check that out? E-bikes, I mean, like, that's going to be pretty rad. I mean, like, oddly enough, we had a very high level like engagement at one point with one of the big vehicle manufacturers in South Africa. Well, that's not something I'm just thinking. They actually don't manufacture locally. Anyway, but it was pretty cool to kind of like go, but hang on a second. What we should do is we go to one of these big car guys and go, when you sell an electric car, buy a battery. Buy a battery. Like, fill up at home. Like, it's like buy a petrol station. It's bad news for petrol station. You guys are screwed. Like, just like, quite frankly.
No, just invest in charge stations, right?
So, but like, but it's like decentralized, and it's stupid. It's like, so we talk about like energy being decentralized and a whole shift and everything.
The generation and consumption.
And it's both. It's like, but you think about it, it's like, everybody kind of went to a central point to get generation. It's not going to happen like that anymore.
No.
Energy is the way we approach energy. I mean, like, even I spent the weekend kind of like vegetating on a couch with this weather we have in Joburg. But I think one of those things was like, if you look at decentralizing virtual power plants across the country, that's the future.
Correct.
And if you look at those principles and you apply it to the EV market,
Correct.
because I mean, like, we all need to drive. Where are we going to fill in? Either at work or at home. I mean, like, what is the probability of me going to have to go park off and go wait 45 minutes to go sit around at a charging station somewhere in the middle of nowhere? You're either going to charge your home or you're going to charge your work.
Correct.
And I think that is a big opportunity, and that's definitely something that the NuHome will be working with you guys on that. I mean, like, that's a whole different little kettle of fish that we're putting together. So
I mean, you can talk about power sharing as well. So people don't even need to have the biggest, best systems. If everyone within a context of a village or in a state was able to have the NuHome system, in future you'll be talking about how we can share power in between as neighbors, right? Because my consumption rate is low because I don't party at night, but Sean does. And I'm like, look, man, you can have 20% of my battery.
Exactly. It's all redundancy, right? So let's just talk about the African context also. For us also, it's moving away from fossil fuels, right? It's that greater dream that we all have. And that is a great passion for us. It's something that will just take the societal aspect of that, and really no one else is going to do it unless we do it for ourselves, right? And that's in any context. So it's having that social aspect also. Energy is a fundamental, I think, human right. Similar to water. You can't say, listen, you can have energy, but I can't have. So it's literally giving that access, and that is where we need to take this thing for sure.
I mean, what has happened with this remote working scenario, right?
Oh, yeah. And that
Children-
happened in 6 months.
Oh,
That
yeah.
whole dynamic shift. Yeah.
The pandemic came on,
Yeah.
and people are now working at home. And whilst you're there, though, here you are. They've given you the productivity tools. They've given you the internet. The power goes off. What happens in that scenario? And now we start having to think about that because we have to adapt to new ways of working. But we haven't necessarily built the solutions behind that to support that scenario. So I mean, there's a lot for us to do.
No, I think that's a big thing to do, and I think that is something. So for everybody out there, myself and Sydney, we've been brainstorming a lot around that, and I think that is a very sexy opportunity that we will be bringing to the market over the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes peeled on that. So we'll definitely be coming with some sexy working from home solutions for everybody, and it'll not just be sexy; it'll be very sexy. So. So yeah, I think from that perspective, I'm quite excited about that. That's really going to be interesting. But I want to do two things very quickly. I want to say thank you for you guys for coming out. I know you guys came very far. So there's a little kind of like sign of appreciation. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And we will give one of the people that liked and shared our little event out there. We'll post you one of these caps. I think before the show, I picked up there was Brendan. I think you've got an unfair advantage there, so you might actually not get it. But hey, let's have a conversation about that. But yeah, let's see who was the winner of that, and we'll get that out to the person that wins. But I think in closing, I think it's important for people and the greater NuHome community to understand that when we choose suppliers and products, there's thinking. There's lots of thinking going on. Someone like Rob is not here. Someone like Jan Hendrik is not here. Ananda is not here. That has put a lot of the thinking in. This is why do we choose to work with guys? And I think, testament today is the words that came out of your mouth, and it showcases exactly why we choose to work with guys like yourselves. Not the other females in the team also like. Sorry, ladies. But yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of that out there, and I think there's really kind of like a reason why we choose to work with you guys. So yeah, I really look forward to walking a very long journey with you guys. NuHome is very excited about it. Big shout out to everybody in Paris. We'll be seeing you in a couple of hours. So yeah, I look forward to that. We'll be hitting Paris up. We're going to change Paris's destiny. We're going to come bring him some green power. So that's quite sexy and exciting. But yeah.